So, I think it's about high time we start getting into off-season plans. Steve's plan. I feel good sometimes I don't. Hey, let's talk about the Detroit Red Wings and Steve Yzerman, what he's got on his plate to address for this upcoming offseason, and where the direction of this team could start to go. I honestly think this conversation is difficult to have, not because there is a distinct idea that we could just go out there and mention, oh, this is what needs to happen and then they'll be good again, but because I feel like there is some uncertainty for many fans. Not in terms of, oh, they need to get this and they need to get that and then they'll be better if they get that. It's just, there are so many things that need to happen, I feel, for the Detroit Red Wings based off of the way they've been playing lately, based off of where some of these players and these contracts project to going. You don't necessarily know if Patrick Kane's going to come back, what's going to happen with Tarasenko, what other names are going to be floating around in the prospect bubble that could or could not have a significant impact next season. There are so many question marks that it really does feel more like a come and see day-by-day type of basis rather than, okay, this is the plan. Get this guy, get that guy, get this kind of a player, and then they'll be good again. It doesn't really feel like that. I feel like there are more external parts. And ultimately, this conversation can be boiled down to a few things, but to help us out, we're going to go over onto The Athletic, because Max Bultman, a few days ago, had himself an article talking about, as the Red Wings' outlook looks bleak, Steve Yzerman's offseason is imperative, and it looms large. This article will be linked in the description. It's on The Athletic. It's paid for material. You could go out there and read it yourself if you have an Athletic subscription. But we're also going to head over onto Spectre's Hockey from March 29th, 2025, because Law Richardson goes out there and paraphrases some of what Bultman goes out there and talks about. More speculation over the Red Wings' offseason plans. Max Bultman looked at GM Steve Yzerman's possible offseason plans as the Detroit Red Wings stumbled down the stretch. Yeah, stumble. That's a good way to put it. Bultman believes Yzerman must improve the Red Wings' depth, but not by adding a third-line forward or a third-pairing defenseman. He felt there must be more help for top forwards, Larkin and Raymond, more puck movers among their defense, and more players who have a more consistent impact on the game. The Washington Capitals and St. Louis Blues were fringe clubs in 23-24 that made bold offseason moves that improved their performance this season. The Capitals are jockeying with the Winnipeg Jets for first overall, while the Blues have surged into a wild-card berth. Spectre's note goes out there and says this: as I've said before, this summer could be the most consequential of Yzerman's tenure as GM of the Red Wings. Another inconsistent season that extends their franchise record postseason drought could cost him his job by this time next year. See, this is what I mean. There aren't really too many definitive ads or pieces or names that we can label as being the fix, quote-unquote. How do the Wings get more depth up front? Okay, there are a number of ways they could go out there and do that. They can sign a guy like a Brock Besser or a Nick Ehlers in the offseason. They can make a trade for a guy who has a few years left. They could do some desperate type of move like the Washington Capitals last year. The Caps did a lot in the offseason of 2024. They acquired Pierre-Luc Dubois. They knew that TJ Oshie and Nick Backstrom were not coming back. They got Matt Roy on defense. They had some pretty significant names added onto their team over the past calendar year. And now look at Washington. They're freaking phenomenal. Dylan Strome is a #1 center. They've bolstered out the rest of that lineup by adding on necessary talent at the top of the lineup and the middle that just pushes everybody else down a notch and increases the caliber of play on every line. The Red Wings have a possibility of doing something similar, but it's not going to come with depth extra adds. It's not going to come with guys of a JT Compher or an Andrew Kopp caliber. It's going to come from a guy who can really score. Another Alex DeBrincat echelon talent piece. And I get it, it's easy to say, oh yeah, add good players and the team will get better. But I think at this point it's becoming more dire because you know that if you don't do this kind of a move, you don't add any absurdly talented pieces, the Wings' current mediocrity might extend towards next season, and that could very well cost Yzerman his job. He's been the GM of this team for over half a decade now, coming up on 6 years at the draft, and the team isn't really projecting much hope in the ways that they are playing right now. Sure, you can say hope into the future, hope into 2027, hope until 2028, but guess what? When Dylan Larkin is 31 years old in 2028, things are going to be different. As much as we love, respect, and adore Dylan Larkin right now, it's difficult to project anybody going from 28, 29 to 32 years old. Furthermore, you talk about the guys that are on the team right now. I wanted to have a conversation about this. Detroit Moments tweeted this out yesterday during the Wings and Blues game. Moritz Seider has been awful for 2 months now. Don't kid yourself. Somebody want to wake up Larkin? Not even a shot on goal. Thanks, Cap. And this is a very critical tweet, I get it. In fact, I actually did drop Seider yesterday in fantasy because I was like, yeah, the guy hasn't been producing any points and I haven't been getting much out of him. Lately, it's the semifinals in the Yahoo Fantasy League, so I have no choice but to make some desperate moves. I can't wait for Seider to get better. We gotta do some things now. But some of the replies on this Twitter thread go out there and say, hey, Seider skating into bodies for no reason and giving up the 2-on-1s. He's been absolutely horrible. The dude is so clumsy. I'm glad I'm not the only one who sees it. Turnover machine. Mo needs so much help and no-show captain, again, must be traded this summer. Four Nations killed Larkin and Raymond, hence why the Wings have one of the worst records in the league since the break, which is very unfortunate because now they are out of the playoff race as well. I mean, they're not out of the race per se, but they are 4 points back of Montreal with the same games played, so it's not looking good. 8 games left for Detroit, maximum of 91 points they can acquire in this season. With every loss, though, that number gets smaller and smaller. So I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Steve Yzerman's plan in the offseason? Boltman is saying they've got to go out there and get some top-end talent, grab a top winger so that everybody else throughout the lineup trickles down and there's just more talent throughout. It's a very duh kind of solution on paper. You add good players, the team gets better, but it's gotten to a point here, I feel, where you have no choice but to do that. You can't just keep on adding mediocrity. You can't be adding middling depth pieces. You can't add Jeff Petries or Ben Sherratts or Justin Halls. You gotta add more. If you want to be the next version of the Washington Capitals, bubbling around the playoff picture before taking the first overall spot next year, you're gonna need to get some extra talent here. And this Todd McClellan coach team is gonna have to find ways to show that dominance they had earlier on in the season more consistently, because we know it exists. We know it is in there. We know these guys can produce and these guys can be top players. It's just we're not seeing that as much as we should. Which is why, let's say, Red Wings fan apathy has started to creep in, I'd say. Fans still care for the team, of course, but like you watch the games and you see the losses and it's like, oh, okay, they did it again. Oh, okay, I can't even get mad. It's what we've been seeing the past few weeks here. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Detroit Red Wings and their offseason plans. What are your thoughts on Moritz Seider struggling as of late? And what are your thoughts on Dylan Larkin doing what he has been doing? A lot of fans seem to be going out there and talking smack about him as well. It's been a bumpy ride for Dylan Larkin, who hasn't scored a point in 2 weeks, it seems like. Let me know in the comment section all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. Zayne, and bye.